Jenny darling, you're my best friend. I like having friends. Hanging out, going to parties, laughing my ass off when one of them cracks a joke. I have a lot of friends, mostly because some of them are very social people and know a lot of people, so they consider me their friends. I don't really know what else to say to this. I like having people to talk to. Don't get me wrong, but sadly, I don't have what I want. But there's a few things that you don't know of. I met this guy at a party a little while ago. He was short and very outgoing. I felt a little shrunk in the corner. Before he came over to me, he had a bright smile and a cute laugh. I already felt myself being pulled in. Kaito and Kaide gave me worried looks as he grabbed my hand and pulled me out to the dance floor. I was confused by this before I looked over into his eyes. "Hiya," he said in a tone that sounded familiar. "Wait a minute, what is that voice? Do you remember me?" He asked in a teasing tone, making me blush. So he knows me, and I know him. Where would I have met him before? Well, it would make sense why Kaito and Kaide gave me those knowing looks. Did me and this guy have a bad relationship before? I have heard your voice before. What's your name?" I asked, feeling my voice come out a little quieter as the music was loud. "I can't hear you," he yelled over the music before he grabbed my hand. "Follow me." He smiled, making my worry and concern fade back into the background of my thoughts. "What?" I asked as he opened one of the side doors and quickly pulled me outside. I gasped at this because of how quiet it was after the door closed. He moved in front of me as I caught my breath. "Kokichi," he said, holding out his hand. I looked down at him confused before it came back to me. "Why I borrow your lipstick so often." "Kokichi Oma," he said, putting his arms behind his head. I blushed and felt even more confused. "What?" I asked, making him drop his hands to his sides. "It's my name, silly. You wanted it, didn't you?" He asked, putting his finger over his lips. "Yeah, sorry." I looked down at my hands before he sighed. "Just don't wear it out, okay?" he said one more time before he left out of my line of sight. Kokichi Oma. I looked after him, feeling a little in awe. It was a little cold that night, but somehow him being there for that small moment made me warm. "I'm using your shirt as a pillowcase." I looked down at him, feeling myself come back into reality. "Hey, look at me," Kokichi said, poking my cheek. "Ah!" I gasped, stumbling back a bit. "Didn't mean to scare you. You're still so jumpy, Shumai," he said, making my cheeks heat up. What did you call me?" I was putting a hand on my cheek. I silently cursed at myself as I felt how warm my cheeks had become. "Well, Shushu, I thought you would remember how much I love to mess with you, Nishishi," he said, making me tilt my head a bit. "That's a lie, isn't it?" I asked, remembering how he was known by all my friends as a liar, and Kaito added that he was also a coward because of this, but I chose to forget that part. "I want to ruin our friendship." "Ah, you know me so well, Suichi," he said, grabbing my hand in his own. "But I can't stay here forever, Shu. I have some things I need to get done," he said, poking my cheek before he turned on his heel and walked away. "Kokichi, wait," I said, but it was lost in the darkness of the outside. Feeling discouraged, I walked back into the party. Kaito and Kaide just gave me a knowing glance before they approached me. "So what did he do?" Kaito asked, giving the door a glare. I raised my hands defensively. "He didn't do anything. We just had a conversation," I said quietly. "You need to speak up, Suichi," Kaito said, giving my back a pat. I jumped a bit at this before nervously laughing. "We should be lovers instead." "Yeah, sorry," I yelled over the music, making him laugh a bit. So what did you say? He asked as Kaede gave me an apologetic look. I just said we had a conversation and that he didn't do anything to me. I said, putting an emphasis on the do. Kaito just moved his hand to the back of his neck. All right, but no, if he did something to you, I'm going to punch him. He said with a loud voice, making my head hurt a bit. Ah, thank you, Kaito, I said before my phone buzzed. I looked at the two of them, and they shrugged before I pulled out my phone. There was a message from Kokichi. I could tell it was him because of the context of the message. Hey, Shuichi, Rentaro gave me your number, I said to myself as I felt my face heat up again. Guys, it's getting late, so I'm gonna go, I said before they both waved to me before I left the party. I don't know how to say this. I went to my apartment, and it was empty as it would usually be, and it just made it more apparent how alone I felt. Like I wanted to have someone here with me, and I knew exactly who I wanted it to be. Kokichi Oma. God, I wish things were different. I wish he would notice me, as I always seem to notice him. My friends don't know about these painful feelings I have for him. I kind of wish I didn't have to admit it, but I'm in love with my best friend. Sure, we haven't seen each other in years, but that doesn't mean my feelings are any different. We were the best of friends in the past, until Kaito claimed that I was his sidekick, making the two of us drift apart. I miss being able to be by his side, and how we used to be able to just call each other whenever, but now it seems like that kind of behavior would be out of place. Ring, ring. I looked down at my phone that was in my hand. It was buzzing like someone was calling me. I looked down at the caller ID, and it was none other than Kokichi. It was so late at night, so why would he be calling me now? 'Cause you're really my dearest friend. Hey, it's you, he said into the phone, making the heat in my cheeks return. Hey, Kokichi, I said, feeling a little awkward talking to him after all this time. Well, it has only been a few years, but it seems like so much has changed between the two of them. I have a job now, and I live on my own. The last time me and Kokichi talked to one another, like we were friends, was the last year I went to college. How have you been? He asked in his usual chirpy tone. I've been alright, I said, pausing for a moment. I didn't want to have to admit how I wasn't exactly feeling great at the moment. How about you? I added, making him hum on his side of the line. I've been doing decent. I mean, Rantaro finally made me get a job, so it's not just Kaito and him making all the money in the house. But, I mean, getting a job means I'm taking a step toward adulthood. He almost sang into the phone. I laughed a little at this. I thought you were an adult already, aren't you 21? I asked into the phone. I remember celebrating his birthday a couple years ago. I believe he is about a half a year younger than me. So knowing I just turned 22, he must still be 21. Well, while that is true, I haven't been doing many adult things after dropping out of college, he said, making me gasp a bit. Wait, you dropped out? I asked, making him go quiet. Yeah, school was so boring without you there. And Kaito was always giving me shit about my grades, and how they should be higher and some other shit, he said with a small sigh. I could tell he was still frustrated with the whole thing with his brother. I always found it so funny how Kaito and Kokichi have been brothers for the longest time, and I never knew. Sure, they are stepbrothers, but still. They always make it seem like they weren't related, and they kind of hate each other, so it was pretty surprising to me. That sounds pretty stressful, I said with a small laugh. Well, yeah, Kaito is just such a party pooper, he said over the phone as I lay down on my bed, looking down at my screen. It was illuminated with his number. I decided to change it to a picture of me and Kokichi from a couple years ago. It was at a party that Kokichi invited me to that Rentaro was running for one of his sisters. He could take a +1, so he chose me. Jenny, darling, you're my best friend. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, me and Kokichi had become better friends. It was a nice experience to becoming friends again. He would invite me to hang out whenever I didn't have work. It was mostly going to the park, a cafe, or even the library. Although Kokichi claims he hates the library, I can tell every time we go there he gets excited. I let him borrow one of my copies of a Phantom Thief story. It was the first one in the series, but was one of my favorite books to read, especially because it's one of the only romance stories I actually enjoy reading. Most of my friends already have a significant other, and some are even married. It's not that I'm not happy for them, I just don't see the point of letting another person get close to you just to have them know everything about you. I mean, isn't that what a best friend is supposed to be? Besides, the kissing and most of the intimate things lovers do, of course. I was sitting on the small couch in my apartment on a Sunday morning. Nothing was scheduled for today, so I decided to read a book on my couch. I enjoyed doing this because of how calming it was to just sit on the couch, hear the soft sounds of the fan, while reading a good book that makes you feel excited to turn the next page. I was so consumed in my own thoughts that I didn't notice somebody knocked on my door. I only noticed this when my lock slid open, making me panic. Is someone going to break in? Why would they break in today of all days? It's one of the only days I'm actually home. Hey, Shu, Kokichi said, opening the door. I blushed as he entered my apartment. Kokichi? What are you doing here? I was slowly putting my bookmark in my book as I looked up at him. Well, he put a hand to his chin. Is it illegal for me to want to hang out with you? He asked, fake tears building up in his eyes. No, it isn't, I said, pulling my hands up as I got off the couch. It's just that breaking into my apartment could be. You could have made the neighbors worry, I said, putting a hand in my forehead. I've been doing bad things that you don't know about. I came in because you, 1, weren't answering your phone, and 2, he held up a finger with each of the reasons he had. You didn't even answer, even though I kept knocking on your door. He put his hands up into his hair before pulling at it for a moment. Sorry, I was reading. I wasn't paying attention. I looked to the side before he moved onto the couch to lay down. Then this is your punishment. He cooed from the couch before he sat up. I tilted my head a bit. What? I asked, not knowing what to do with myself. I felt awkward and wanted to walk away from the situation. While at the same time, I wanted to figure out what he meant by that. You heard what I said, he said, giving me a wink. Why all of a sudden? I started before he got up and pushed me onto the couch. I gasped a bit at this, and my hand grabbed onto the front of his shirt because of my fear of falling. He smiled at this. Well. He paused and moved closer to me, making my face inflame. What did you think I was going to do to you? He asked before he sat down next to me. I relaxed a bit, but still felt painfully embarrassed about his teasing and the effect it had on my heart. Stealing your stuff, now and then. I'm not sure, I said before the room went quiet for another. This was before Kokichi groaned and put his head on the back of the couch. What's wrong? I asked before he moved his hands to cover his eyes. Rentaro and his girlfriend are going on a date, and I told him I had a boyfriend and that I would be there, so... Saichi? He whispered before he moved to face me on the couch. Would you be my date? He asked, making my heart burst. Yes! I said, sounding more enthusiastic than I meant to sound. Great, he said with his laugh. Nishishi? So that's why you came over here, I asked with a smile. He looked to the side before he shook his head a few times. Yuppers! He poked the tip of my nose before he walked over to sit in one of the stools in the kitchen area. So you better get dressed and ready, Saichi. You only have 30 minutes, he said with a laugh. It's so like Kokichi to do things like this totally out of the blue, but I can't say I hate it when this happens. I noticed the jacket Kokichi was wearing was the one I gave him a while back, so I decided to wear the one I stole from him a long time ago. It was one of his oversized gaming jackets. It had images of the game series called Danganronpa on the sleeves and the back, while the front of the jacket and the cuffs were a dark purple color. Ah, I remember that jacket, he said, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. I blushed at this before saying, Sorry, I can give it back if you want. He laughed at this and put his hand on my hair. You can keep it, Saichi. It looks better on you anyway, he said with a smirk. I felt relieved at this, and felt more confident about wearing the jacket to our date. Nothing you'd miss, but it means the world to me. There are some other items that I ended up taking from him, because I wanted to be able to have little things that reminded me of him, so I could feel like he was with me in little ways. I could tell that Kokichi had done the same with some of my pencils and other items that just up and went missing while we were in school together, only to see him using them days later. I felt like I was weird for feeling this way about someone that I considered my best friend, but honestly, I don't know what this is. I told Kaede about these feelings while we were in school together. She told me I had a crush on him. I was in denial about this for a long time before we weren't together as best friends anymore. Then I realized how much I missed him. How much I needed him. I want to ruin our friendship. Best to get going before Rantaro leaves without us, he said, taking my hand in his own. I felt so nervous about this because of the context of him doing it. We have held hands before, but knowing we were going on a date, and he was holding my hand because of this, it made me feel happy. Yeah, I said in return as I walked out of my apartment with him. I made sure to have my keys in my pocket, as well as locking the door behind us. I was about to ask Kokichi where the date was going to be before he started talking. I don't know if you know why Rantaro's girlfriend is, or that he even had one in the first place, but he started before he cut himself off. I mean, you are my best friend, so I'm sure we're going to have a good time. He smiled at me, making me feel even more worried about this. Is Rantaro going to find out that me and Kokichi aren't actually dating? We should be lovers instead. Hey, Kokichi! Rantaro called out from inside the cafe before Kokichi rushed in, while still holding onto my hand. Hello, Rantaro, he said, letting my hand fall so he could give Rantaro a hug. I'm assuming they do this sometimes, but I can't help but feel jealous about it. So, Saichi is your boyfriend? He asked, sounding skeptical. Yuppers, my beloved Shu-chan is my boyfriend, he said, putting his arms out in front of me for effect. All I could do was blush and cover my face with my hand. Alrighty, he said, moving over with his date. She was a pretty girl, and she had her silver hair up in a messy side bun. Her outfit looked comfortable, as well as having the colors of light pink and blue blending well together. I don't know how to say this. Hey, my name is Triana, but you can call me Trey. She held out her hand for me to shake before Kokichi butted in. Hey, what about me? He said in a whiny tone, to which the girl rolled her eyes. Okay, Kokichi, she said, patting him on the head. Hey, he gasped, backing away towards me as she laughed. We moved over to our table and sat down next to our dates. I still felt nervous about Kokichi saying that I'm his boyfriend. Maybe it's because I want to be something more with him. I want to hold him like lovers do in the movies and hold hands in the dark when it's a moment when we are alone, and I never got your name, she said after the laughter died down. I blushed at her interrupting my thoughts, but was glad she did. Who knows where that could have ended up. "'Cause you're really my dearest friend." "I'm Saichi Saihara," I said, giving her a smile. She smiled back before moving her gaze over to Kokichi. "I would have expected you to have a more obnoxious date," she said bluntly, making him build up some fake tears in his eyes. "Why are you so mean to me?" he gasped, moving to cry on my shoulder. I put a hand on my forehead before I turned to him. "I want to ruin our friendship." "Shu?" he asked as I grabbed hold of his shoulders and made him face me. He looked confused and still had some fake tears coming out of his eyes. "I mean, Shuichi seems so calm and collected, while you are definitely something else," she said to Rantaro, making him chuckle a bit while she laughed under her breath. "That's not nice," he said, looking over to Trey. She just shrugged her shoulders and looked over at Rantaro, who shared a knowing look with her. Is something going on with them? Did I say something wrong? Wait, did they know that me and Kokichi aren't actually dating? "You and I both know that you are a little out of control sometimes," she said with a teasing glint in her eye. Is she trying to make him agitated? I don't know how to say this. "Well, you aren't very nice with how blunt you are," he said back, making her brow furrow. Rantaro put his hand on her cheek and calmed her down. "Calm down. Jesus," Rantaro said before Kokichi slouched back into his seat. Did her words really offend him that much? Rantaro, a few moments after I looked over at Kokichi, gave me a wink, making me blush. "What the hell?" "Hello, what would you all like to order?" the waitress said, coming over to our table. We all told her what we were eating, except for Kokichi. He refused to talk, so I just ordered him something along with mine, so we could just share. I know what he likes to eat better than most people, so I got him a sandwich without the crust as well as a small cake. He loves sweets and adores anything grape, which is funny considering his hair color and how Kaito and Rantaro sometimes call him Little Grape. "Shuichi?" Kokichi muttered under his breath. I turned to face him as Rantaro and Trey were having their own conversation. "Kokichi, what's going on?" I asked quietly so the others didn't hear me. Kokichi seemed to perk up at this before he slumped in his chair. "I don't know," he said a little colder. I shivered at the response I got before they brought in whoa. I don't know. Sorry. It says colder, so we gotta be cold. "I don't know," he said a little colder. I shivered at the response I got before they brought the food to the table. "'Cause you're really my dearest friend." "Hey, Trey, you don't have to feed me, you know," Rantaro sighed, looking to the side with a small blush coming to his cheeks. "Well, I guess it's funnier this way," she said with a teasing tone. "It's funnier this way, she says," Rantaro said before she shoved another bite into his mouth. "Kokichi," I said, looking back over at him. He had barely even touched any of his food. Is he still mad about earlier? "Jenny, take my hand." "Hey, Shumai," he said in his normal teasing tone after a few moments. I smiled a bit, knowing he was back to the fun-loving and somewhat childish Kokichi I knew so well. "Hey," I said, gently cupping his cheek in my hand. "'Cause we are more than friends." I didn't know what my mind was doing, but his face was coming closer to mine. My brain was screaming at me to stop, or for me to pull away. But there was something in the air that was making me feel more confident all of a sudden. "I will follow you until the end. I know it bothered you earlier. Know that you are the only one I want to see," I said in a slightly deeper voice. Kokichi seemed a little shocked by this before he put his hands on my chest and traced a circle on my chest with one of his hands. "Seems like Mr. Shy has finally become more confident, he said, making me feel a little frustrated that I was trying so hard and he was moving farther away from me. "This is just a joke date, right? Then why do I feel like he wants this as well?" Maybe it's just wishful thinking. Jenny, take my hand. I pulled away after planting a kiss on his cheek. This was because I felt way too nervous to plant one on his lips now. I mean, after that display, I'm certain some people were staring, and Kokichi doesn't even seem fazed by it. It's probably because his heart isn't going crazy like mine is right now. Look at those two. You're so super cute, Trey said, making me remember that there were other people with us. I'd nearly forgotten that they were here, but a small part of me wanted for me and Kokichi to be here alone. Oh, stop it, Kokichi said in the same teasing tone. But you are, right, Ran? She said, making Rantaro blush a bit. I told you not to call me that in public, he whispered, before she asked again. Right? She said, gesturing to the two of us. Rantaro smirked and leaned over to pat Kokichi on the head. Look at you getting a job and getting a boyfriend in the same week. I just hope you aren't using him, Kichi. Because you remember how that turned out. He said the last part under his breath, making me wonder what must have happened before. I cannot pretend. I looked over at Kokichi, who sat up defensively. I know, jeez, he said, looking to the side before Rantaro's side. Just know that if you are using him, that it could turn out that he has real feelings for you. He said, making me flinch. Does he know? Does he know about my feelings for Kokichi? God fucking damn it. Of course he would know. It's so obvious. I'm such a stupid and anxious emo. I hate it. Why I never like your new boyfriends. He wasn't even worth it. He just wanted to have sex and leave me anyway. He said, taking a drink out of his cup before placing it back on the table. Rantaro hummed a bit in response, before I looked at Kokichi. What happened? I asked, looking him in the eyes. He looked me in the eyes for a moment, as if he was debating about something in his head. I was just a dumbass boy who wanted to use me as an experiment to see if he was gay. He said with a cold tone. He was bitter about it, and I'm sure that's why he's probably hesitant to get in another relationship after something like that. I'm so sorry. I paused, putting my arm around his shoulders, just so he could flinch away from me. I didn't know, I said, moving back in my spot, feeling guilty about the whole situation. It's alright, I just didn't mention it, he said with another smile and a laugh. I could tell this one was more forced. Oh, your love for them won't last long. I wonder about these feelings. Is Kokichi hiding more things from me? Maybe he knows about my feelings for him. Then why does he always tease me and play with my feelings like this? I clenched my hand to my chest as I stood in the shower. The cafe date ended about 20 minutes ago. Me and Kokichi drove back to my apartment before I was an idiot and asked him about it again. He got angry and yelled at me before he left after slapping my cheek. It still hurt even though you couldn't see the mark anymore. You're just the same, he yelled, looking angry. What? The same as what? I was feeling a little more defensive than I usually would. The same as the others, you just want to use me, he said, making me snap. Use you? I let you play with my heart and dance around my feelings all the damn time, so don't tell me how I use you, I yelled back. Before he walked over to me. He looked up at me with angry tears in his eyes. What if I wasn't toying? His hand slapped against my cheek, making me flinch before he left and slammed the door behind him. Forget those amigos. I didn't even call him or text him after that. What am I supposed to say? I made him have to remember some painful memories before making him have to deal with my yelling. If what he said was true, that means he wasn't toying around with me. He wasn't lying about it. He wanted to go on a date with me, and in that moment he was thinking we were actually dating the same as I was. Why didn't I notice it sooner? Oh, your love for them won't last long. I got out of the shower and got dressed. I quickly brushed my hair after mostly drying it with a towel. After that, I rushed out of my apartment, going to Kaito's apartment. I need to tell him how I feel. Forget those amigos. I ran out of my apartment building before dashing over to my car. I hopped into the driver's seat and started the car. I soon got out of the parking lot and started on my way to Kaito's apartment. I've been there a few times when Kaito wanted to watch a movie night, but those times I was there, Kokichi never even made an appearance and always made me feel so sad. I never knew the reason then, but I know it now. Forget those amigos. I got to their house and ran up to the front door and rang the doorbell. I know it was later in the day and they may even be sleeping, but I need to tell him. After a few long moments of waiting, Kaito answered the door. "Ah, Saichi," he said with a cold look on his face. My smile soon faded as he punched me in the cheek, making me stagger back a bit. "I want to ruin our friendship." "You really think dating my brother is a good idea, huh?" he said, getting even more defensive about it. I slowly shook my head, slowly getting back up to face him. "I'm not dating him," I sighed, putting a hand at the back of my neck. "You aren't?" Kaito asked, looking at me with another glare. "We should be lovers instead." Yes, he only wanted me to pretend to be his boyfriend today because Rantaro invited him to a double date. I whispered, feeling some tears come to my eyes. "Then why did he come home crying?" "I didn't see him cry so much. That must mean you did something," he said, still sounding very angry. I felt some tears start to fall down my cheeks before I looked back into his eyes. I don't know how to say this. Well, I told him that I was done with him playing with my heart. I was done having to pretend we were just friends when I always felt like we were something more. I was so done having to deal with this loneliness, and it made me act in such a way that I just feel disgusted with myself. I yelled, making him go silent. I wiped some of my tears away. Before I walked back up to him, I just wanted to tell Kokichi I'm sorry, and that I love him. I said, turning my back to him before muttering, "I'm sorry to wake you up. 'Cause you're really my dearest friend." I almost got all the way back to my car before Kaito spoke up. "Was that good enough for you, Kokichi?" he asked, making me blush. "Kokichi?" "Yeah, thanks, Kaito," he said, leaving the house as I turned around to face him. What?" I asked, not knowing what else to say. He moved to where I was standing and wrapped his arms around my back. "I wanted you to admit that you liked me, but you never did it, and it made me feel frustrated with you," he said, looking at me with some tears in his eyes. "I see now that this was a rude move on my part. I thought you knew I liked you, but you never said anything, and I thought my feelings were one-sided. Oh, your love for them won't last long." "But I thought you were always just messing with me." I cut myself off before I returned his hug by wrapping my arms around his back. "Sorry, I should have said something sooner," I whispered, letting my last tears fall out of my eyes as I smiled. "We should be lovers instead. I can't believe I made up this whole plan to go on a joke date with you, when I really could have just asked you out," he sighed and moved out in the embrace for a moment. "Well, I mean, we can't be smart all the time," I said before Kokichi turned to Kaito. "Isn't that right, Kaito?" he said with a smirk. Kaito glared at him. "Well, you guys have fun. I'm going inside," he said with a glare at Kokichi before he smiled. "Oh, your love for them won't last long." Kokichi looked back up at me and smiled. I knew this had been the moment I had been waiting for all day. The kiss. I didn't know how I was going to go about kissing him, but I'm sure it will come to me. He moved his hand to the collar of my shirt before pulling it down to his level. His eyes were where mine were. We looked at each other, and I swear I saw some stars in his eyes. He smiled up at me and moved closer so his lips were inching towards mine. "'Cause you're really my dearest friend." His hands moved up to my hair as his breath soon hit against my lips, slowly warming my lips as my anxiety about the kiss seemed to skyrocket. I was so worried I was going to do something wrong. I felt so unprepared for this moment. "We should be lovers instead." "It's okay," Kokichi whispered as our lips were barely touching. "Just kiss me," he said before I moved my lips against his own. "'Cause you're really my dearest friend." I felt my whole body shudder at the touch. Kokichi's hands went into my hair as I sighed against his lips. He just slowly moved his lips against mine in their own rhythm. I soon matched his rhythm, so we were in sync. "Jenny." I pulled away after a moment of kissing and looked into his eyes. "Well, maybe some things are supposed to happen," I said with a small laugh before he added, "You have no idea." And with that, he kissed me again as the night covered us, protecting this moment for us and us alone.